While visiting Canada, my wife and friends secretly cancelled my flight ticket and left without me as a prank. Next day, she started sending me messages when they arrived in the USA. That was fun, she said. I ignored her for 5 days until I replied. Thanks for this. Sarah has been the sweetest. 271 desperate calls. Look, I'm not saying I'm a romantic, but I had plans. Specifically, I had plans that involved waking up next to my wife, ordering a stack of pancakes so tall it could qualify as a fire hazard, and maybe, just maybe, getting some of that vacation sex that travel brochures never mention, but everyone secretly hopes for. You know, the kind where you're slightly sunburned, moderately tipsy from overpriced wine, and convinced that your relationship is basically a Nicholas Sparks novel with better jokes. Instead, I woke up to the kind of silence that makes horror movie directors weep with envy. My hand reached across the king-sized bed of our cozy luxury cabin in B, which by the way cost more per night than my first car, and found nothing but cold sheets and the faint smell of Meera's coconut body lotion. Not the warm sleep-soft body of my wife of 3 years. Not even a note scribbled on hotel stationery with some cutesy "wanna get coffee? Back soon" message with a heart dotted over the I like she usually did. Just emptiness. Cold judgmental emptiness. I sat up squinting against the obnoxious morning sunlight streaming through the window and did a quick visual scan of the room. Her suitcase gone. Her toiletries that normally colonized 75% of the bathroom counter vanished. Those ridiculous fuzzy slippers shaped like bears that she insisted on packing even though we were literally in bear country. Not a trace. "Mirror," I called out, my voice scratchy and pathetic in the silence. Nothing. Not even the sound of the shower running or the familiar clatter of her dropping something in the bathroom because she had the grace of a drunk giraffe before 10 a.m. That's when my stomach did that thing where it drops into your shoes and sets up a permanent residence there. You know that feeling when something is wrong, but your brain hasn't quite caught up to what your gut already knows. Like when you realize you left your phone in an Uber, or when you see your credit card statement after a night out with Derek. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, already knowing I wasn't going to like what I found. 3 missed calls from my sister Grace. 2 texts from my best friend Derek asking if I was still alive up there in maple syrup land. And 1 message from an unknown number that turned out to be a reminder about my car's extended warranty. Classic, but then I saw it. The text from Meera sent at 2:47 a.m. that was fun. "You should have seen your face. Face with tears of joy. Face blowing kiss." I stared at it. Read it again. Then a 3rd time just to make sure I wasn't having a stroke or experiencing some kind of altitude-induced hallucination. Fun. What was fun? My face. When I'd been asleep since midnight after we'd spent the evening playing board games with her friends, Nora, Becca, and Tina, aka the Fun Squad, aka the 3 women who treated adult life like an extended sorority rush week. They'd been giggling over wine while I pretended to understand why they found a video of a cat falling off a counter so hilarious it required 17 replays. I scrolled up through our text history looking for context, for clues, for literally anything that would explain why my wife was texting me like we just pulled off some elaborate Ocean's 11 heist together. Nothing. The last message before that was from yesterday afternoon. "Can you grab more wine? Becca drinks like a fish with daddy issues." My hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from that special cocktail of confusion and rising anger that makes you want to throw your phone out a window while simultaneously gripping it like it's the last helicopter out of a zombie apocalypse. I called her straight to voicemail. Called again. Voicemail. 3rd time. You guessed it. Her voice all chipper and fake apologetic. "Hey, you've reached Meera. I'm probably doing something fun without my phone. Leave a message or don't. I'll call you back when I feel like it." "When you feel like it," I muttered to myself, already pacing the cabin in my boxers and the free robe that smelled vaguely of industrial laundry detergent. That's just great. Fantastic. Really reassuring mirror. That's when I noticed the other empty spaces. The spot where Nora's oversized tote bag had been sitting. The corner where Becca had stacked her 3 suitcases because apparently a 4-day trip required enough outfit changes for a royal tour. Tina's yoga mat that she'd propped against the wall and never actually used. All gone. "Oh no," I said out loud to the empty cabin, to the judgmental moose painting on the wall, to whatever deity was clearly laughing at me from above. "Oh no, no, no." I dialed the airline, waited through 4 minutes of hold music that sounded like it was composed by someone who hated joy. Finally, a customer service rep named Madison picked up with that trained cheerfulness that made you want to apologize for existing. "Hi. Yes, I need to check on my flight back to Seattle today," I said, already pulling up my confirmation email with the kind of frantic energy usually reserved for defusing bombs in action movies. "He's clicking." A pause that lasted 3 eternities. Then Mr. Hayes, I'm showing that your reservation was cancelled at 2:14 this morning. The world tilted. Cancelled by who? By. Let me see Hayes. She called and said you wanted to extend your trip. Madison's voice had that apologetic edge now, like she could sense through the phone that she was about to ruin someone's entire existence. She was very specific. Said you were having such a good time that you wanted to stay a few more days. I laughed, actually laughed, which probably made me sound like a super villain having a mental breakdown. She said I wanted to extend my trip. Yes, sir. Is there a problem? Is there a problem? I repeated slowly, sinking onto the edge of the bed. Well, Madison, let me paint you a picture. My wife, who apparently moonlights as a comedian, cancelled my flight home while I was asleep, took all her friends and left me stranded in Canada with nothing but a half-eaten granola bar and enough emotional damage to fuel a therapy practice for years. Silence then. Oh. Oh my. That's not good, sir. You think I was spiraling now, running my hand through my hair so hard I probably looked like I'd been electrocuted. So, what are my options here, Madison? What does one do when one's wife decides that international abandonment is peak comedy? She put me on hold. The music came back, mocking me with its synthesized cheerfulness. When Madison returned, her voice had shifted into crisis management mode. The next available flight is in 3 days, Mr. Hayes. I can book you on that, but there will be a change fee. Of course there will be, I said, laughing again because the alternative was screaming into a pillow or possibly throwing myself into the lake outside. Why wouldn't there be? This day just keeps getting better. After I hung up, I sat there in that stupid expensive cabin, surrounded by the remnants of what was supposed to be a romantic vacation. The empty wine bottles, the board games we'd played, the panoramic windows showcasing the Canadian Rockies in all their majestic indifferent glory. And that's when it hit me. Really hit me. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't Meera being spontaneous or quirky or any of those other words people use to excuse inexcusable behavior. This was betrayal dressed up in girl boss humor served with a side of maple syrup and a generous helping of what the hell is wrong with my life. I looked at my phone one more time at that text message with its stupid emojis and felt something shift in my chest. Not heartbreak, not yet. More like the moment before heartbreak when you're standing on the edge and you know you're about to fall, but you're still processing the geometry of your own destruction. Well, I said to the empty room, to the moose painting, to the universe that clearly had it out for me. I guess I'm staying in Canada. And somewhere in Seattle, my wife was probably laughing with her friends, already posting about her hilarious prank on social media, completely oblivious to the fact that she just lit our marriage on fire and handed me the ashes. Welcome to be Liam Hayes. Population, you, your shattered expectations, and one extremely judgmental granola bar. The thing about hitting rock bottom is that you don't get to do it with dignity. You can't just gracefully descend into your personal crisis while wearing a nice suit and maintaining good posture. No, rock bottom comes for you when you're wearing yesterday's jeans. Your hair looks like you fought a bear and lost. And you're pretty sure you forgot to brush your teeth because who thinks about dental hygiene when their wife just pulled off an international abandonment scheme? So there I was, dragging my defeated carcass down to the Lodge Cafe like some kind of zombie who'd given up on eating brains and settled for eating feelings instead. The morning crowd was already there. Families with their matching fleece jackets, couples holding hands like they'd never heard of divorce, and one guy wearing a shirt that said, "I'm only here for the moose." Which felt aggressively on brand for Canada. Even the stuffed moose in the gift shop display looked like it was pitying me. I swear its glass eyes followed me across the lobby with an expression that screamed, "Buddy, you okay?" "No, Mr. Moose. No, I am not." I collapsed into a chair at the counter and caught the attention of a barista who looked like she'd seen some things in her day. Her name tag read, Janet, and she had that weathered, no-nonsense energy of someone who'd worked every holiday shift since 2003. "Coffee," I croaked. "The strongest thing you've got. Like, if it can't power a Tesla or strip paint off a car, I don't want it." Janet raised an eyebrow. "Rough night, rough morning, rough life, rough everything." I slumped over the counter. My wife left me stranded in Canada as a prank. I'm living in a sitcom written by someone who hates me. She poured me something that looked less like coffee and more like liquid existential dread. "Sugar, what's the point?" I said, then immediately added, "Yes, please. All of it. Pour the whole container in there." That's when I heard the laugh. Not a polite chuckle or a sympathetic titter, but a full-blown genuine laugh that sounded like someone had just heard the punchline to the world's most absurd joke. Which, fair enough, because my life had become exactly that. I turned to see a woman at a corner table, laptop open in front of her, one hand covering her mouth like she was trying to contain the amusement. She had dark curly hair pulled back in a messy bun, glasses that kept sliding down her nose, and the kind of face that suggested she found most of life moderately entertaining, but was too polite to say so. Her laptop was covered in stickers. I could make out "Avoid toxic people" next to a cartoon of an angry-looking cactus maple before mayhem with a little Canadian flag and my personal favorite. "I shoot people and sometimes cut off their heads," which I assumed was a photography joke and not a confession. She caught me staring and had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. "Sorry, I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but also this is a small cafe and you did just announce your marital crisis to Janet and the entire breakfast crowd." "Great," I muttered, "add public humiliation to today's agenda." Right between abandoned and stranded, she closed her laptop and walked over, coffee mug in hand. Up close, I could see she was maybe late 20s with the kind of casual confidence that came from spending a lot of time traveling alone and not caring what people thought. She wore hiking boots, jeans with actual dirt on them, and a flannel shirt that had definitely seen better days. "Sarah Morales," she said, extending a hand. "Freelance travel photographer, professional observer of human disasters." "Liam Hayes," I replied, shaking it. "Current human disaster. Unprofessional at pretty much everything apparently, including choosing life partners." She slid into the seat next to me without asking, which should have been annoying, but somehow wasn't. "So, let me get this straight. Your wife canceled your flight while you were asleep and just left like a really terrible magician making a husband disappear." "Pretty much." She sent me a text that said, "That was fun. You should have seen your face," with laughing emojis like we just pulled off some elaborate heist instead of her committing what I'm pretty sure is spousal abandonment. Sarah let out a low whistle. "Wow, that's not a prank. That's a war crime," with a heart emoji attached. "Thank you." I threw my hands up, nearly knocking over my paint-stripping coffee. Finally, someone who gets it. Everyone back home keeps saying, "Oh, Meera is just spontaneous," or "That's just her sense of humor," like I'm the crazy one for not finding international abandonment hilarious. "Let me guess," Sarah said, stirring her own coffee with the tiny wooden stick that came with it. "She's the kind of person who thinks chaos is a personality trait, who calls herself random and quirky when what she actually is exhausting." I stared at her. "Are you psychic? Did you bug my marriage? How do you know this?" She laughed. "I've been traveling solo for 3 years. You meet all types and my dysfunction is actually a fun personality type. They leave a trail of confused, hurt people across every continent, usually with really good Instagram captions about living their truth or whatever." Janet slid a basket of pastries between us with a look that suggested she was invested in this conversation. "Now on the house," she said, "you look like you need carbs and therapy." "Janet, you're a saint," I said, immediately, grabbing what looked like a cinnamon roll the size of my head. Sarah took a croissant and leaned back in her chair, studying me with the analytical eye of someone who'd spent too much time behind a camera. "So, what's your plan? Wallow here until your next available flight? Send passive-aggressive texts? Write a strongly worded Yelp review about marriage?" "I don't actually have a plan." I admitted this wasn't exactly in the vacation itinerary. Day 1, romantic mountain getaway. Day 2, wife commits prank-based abandonment. Day 3, question every life choice while eating feelings. "Solid schedule," Sarah said with a nod. "But might I suggest an alternative? One that doesn't involve you sitting in this cafe until you become part of the furniture." "I'm listening." She pulled out her phone and started typing. "Okay, first you need a place to stay. That isn't going to bankrupt you. That cabin you were in, way too expensive for an abandoned husband budget. There's a hostel in town, clean, cheap, doesn't smell like wet socks or broken dreams." "How do you know it doesn't smell like wet socks?" "Because I stayed there last month. It smells like pine trees and the faint hope of better decisions." Second, food. Real food, not just cafe pastries and sadness. "I know a place that does poutine that'll make you forget you have problems for at least 20 minutes. I couldn't help but smile. 20 whole minutes. That's longer than my marriage lasted, apparently. See, you're already healing. Third, you need a plan to get home that doesn't involve paying those ridiculous change fees. I know a travel agent here who owes me a favor. Helped her with some website photos last year. She can probably work some magic." I looked at this stranger. This Sarah Morales with her sticker-covered laptop and her practical solutions and her complete lack of judgment about my disaster of a situation, and felt something shift. Not romance, not yet, just relief, like I'd been drowning and someone had thrown me a life preserver made of common sense and sarcasm. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. "You don't even know me. I could be a terrible person who deserved this." Sarah shrugged. "Maybe, but I don't think so. Terrible people don't look that genuinely confused when someone screws them over. They usually see it coming because they've done it to someone else. She paused. Plus, I'm Canadian. Helping stranded Americans is basically in our constitution. Right between hockey and apologizing for things that aren't our fault. By the time evening rolled around, Sarah had made good on every promise. She'd walked me to a hostel that was shockingly decent, introduced me to her travel agent friend Monica, who was already working on getting me a better flight, and taken me to a restaurant where the poutine was so good I almost forgot I was in the middle of a marriage implosion. We were sitting outside on a patio wrapped in the blankets the restaurant provided because Canada takes outdoor dining seriously, even when it's freezing. And Sarah said something that stuck with me. You know, Liam, sometimes being stranded isn't the worst thing. Sometimes it's just the universe's polite Canadian way of saying, hey, buddy, you needed a break. Maybe not this dramatic of a break, but still. I looked out at the mountains, at the stars starting to appear, at this weird limbo I'd been forced into. And for the first time since waking up alone, I didn't feel entirely terrible. Sarah, yeah, thanks for not letting me become furniture. She grinned. Anytime. Besides, abandoned husbands make excellent photography subjects. Very authentic emotional range. You know what's weird about getting your life blown up? The way your brain suddenly decides to become a highlight reel of every red flag you ignored. Like some sadistic film director in your head finally got the green light to release the director's cut, complete with commentary track and behind-scenes footage of your own stupidity. That's what was happening to me on day 2 of my Canadian exile. While Sarah and I wandered through the snowy streets of BA, she'd insisted we explore, said something about how sitting around feeling sorry for myself wasn't going to change anything except maybe my credit score when I stress-ordered things off Amazon at 3 a.m. The woman had a point. We were walking past shops selling overpriced souvenirs because apparently $17 for a keychain shaped like a moose is reasonable in tourist economics. When Sarah asked the question I'd been dreading, so, was this a one-time thing, or is your wife always like this, I stopped mid-stride, nearly causing a collision with a family of tourists who were too busy taking selfies to watch where they were going. Define like this. Sarah gave me a look over her coffee cup. The kind of look that said she already knew the answer and was just waiting for me to catch up to reality. Chaotic, boundary challenged. The kind of person who thinks other people's discomfort is entertainment. And that's when the floodgates opened, not tears. I was saving those for later, probably in the shower where no one could judge me, but memories. A greatest hits compilation of how did I not see this coming. Okay, I said, gesturing for us to sit on a bench overlooking some postcard perfect mountain view that I was too emotionally compromised to appreciate. You want to know if this is a pattern? Buckle up because we're about to take a trip down trauma lane. Sarah settled in, pulling her jacket tighter against the cold. I'm ready. I've got coffee and I've already mentally cleared my afternoon schedule. Flashback number 1. I began feeling like a narrator in my own tragic documentary, The Surprise Party from Hell. We'd been married for about a year and our anniversary was coming up. I specifically said, and I cannot stress this enough. I specifically said I wanted a quiet dinner, just us, something intimate and romantic. Maybe that Italian place downtown where they make the pasta in front of you and charge you $30 for the privilege of watching. Let me guess, Sarah interrupted. It was not a quiet dinner. It was not a quiet dinner, I confirmed. I came home from work that day ready to change into something nice, and there were 50 people in our apartment. 50 coworkers I barely knew. Her college friends who still acted like they were rushing a sorority. Random neighbors who definitely just came for the free food. There was a DJ, Sarah. There was a DJ in our living room playing music so loud our elderly neighbor called the cops. Sarah's eyes widened. For your anniversary? For our anniversary? And when I tried to talk to Meera about it, tried to explain that I really just wanted a quiet evening. You know what she said? I could feel my voice rising. All the frustration from that night bubbling back up. She said, "You're so boring, Liam." I was trying to make it fun. Why can't you just relax and have a good time? Translation, I completely ignored what you wanted, and now I'm making you the bad guy for not enjoying my chaos, Sarah said flatly. Bingo, we have a winner. I took a sip of my now cold coffee, grimacing at the taste, but drinking it anyway because wasting caffeine felt wrong. But wait, there's more. Flashback number 2, the kayak catastrophe. Sarah actually laughed. This already sounds promising. Oh, it gets better or worse, depending on your perspective. I leaned back against the bench, staring up at the impossibly blue sky. Last summer, we went to Lake Washington with Derek and his girlfriend. Beautiful day, calm water, perfect conditions for a nice, relaxing paddle. We rent kayaks, The tandem kind where you have to actually work together or you just spin in circles like an idiot. I sense this is not a story about successful teamwork. We made it maybe 50 feet from the dock, I continued. When Meera decides it would be hilarious to rock the kayak, not a little wobble, mind you, full-on trying to capsize us movements. I'm telling her to stop. She's laughing like a maniac. And then boom, we're in the water in the middle of the lake. My phone is ruined. My wallet is soaked and I'm pretty sure I inhaled about a gallon of lake water that probably contained traces of goose poop. Sarah was trying not to laugh. I could tell. Please tell me there's a good reason. Oh, there's a reason. A great reason, really. She wanted to make a TikTok. Epic kayak fail or something equally stupid. Never mind that I couldn't breathe. Never mind that Derek had to paddle over and help us because I was genuinely scared we were going to drown. She got her video though. 3,000 likes. Totally worth the trauma and the $200 phone replacement. Jesus, Sarah muttered. But wait, I said, holding up a finger like an infomercial host. There's more. Flashback number 3, the most recent one before this vacation, the sushi surprise. Why do I feel like no one was actually surprised by this sushi? Because you're learning, I said. 2 months ago, Meera texts me at work. Says she's ordering sushi for dinner from that new place downtown. Asked if I want my usual. I say, sure, sounds great. I'm thinking maybe 40, 50 bucks tops for some decent rolls. I get home and there are bags everywhere. Plural. Multiple bags. Enough sushi to feed a small army or one very ambitious sumo wrestler. Sarah's mouth fell open. How much? $800. I'm sorry. What? $800. I enunciated each word. She ordered everything on the menu. Everything. Stuff I couldn't even pronounce. Stuff that came with gold flakes on it because apparently that's a thing people do to food now. We had sushi in our fridge for a week. A week, Sarah. Do you know how much sushi you have to eat to go through $800 worth? That's not spontaneous, Sarah said, her voice taking on an edge. That's financial recklessness disguised as fun. But here's the kicker. I continued feeling my blood pressure rising just remembering it. When I asked her why she ordered so much, why she didn't check with me before spending that much money, she said, and I quote, I wanted to support local businesses. Why are you being so cheap? It's just money. Sarah was quiet for a moment, staring at me with something between sympathy and horror. Finally, she spoke. Liam, I need you to hear this, okay? That's not quirky. That's not spontaneous or fun or any of those words people use to make chaos sound cute. That's someone who treats other people's boundaries, feelings, and bank accounts like suggestions instead of requirements. I let out a long breath, watching it fog in the cold air. I know. I mean, I think I always knew, but I kept telling myself she'd grow out of it, that it was just a phase, or that I was being too uptight, or that this was just what marriage looked like. Marriage looks like respect, Sarah said firmly. It looks like consideration. It looks like giving a damn when your partner says, hey, this thing you did hurt me. Instead of making them feel crazy for having feelings. We sat there in silence for a while watching tourists bundle past us. Couples holding hands. Families arguing about where to eat lunch. Normal vacation problems. Not my wife abandoned me internationally problems. You know what the worst part is? I finally said everyone loved her. My friends, my family, my coworkers, they all thought she was amazing, so funny, so full of life, so spontaneous. And I'm sitting there like the boring husband who can't take a joke, who's always worried about money or plans or common sense. I started to think maybe I was the problem. Sarah turned to look at me, her expression serious. You weren't the problem, Liam. You were the person trying to survive someone else's tornado while they convinced everyone that tornadoes are just misunderstood weather patterns. I paused. That's actually a really good metaphor. I've had practice. My ex left me at the airport once because, and I quote, you walk too slow. Turns out people who can't handle basic human pace also can't handle basic human decency. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time since this whole disaster started. We should start a support group. Survivors of partners who think chaos is a love language. We'd need a bigger venue, Sarah said with a grin. Now come on. I'm freezing my ass off and you need more coffee. Plus, I want to show you this bookstore that has a cat named Chairman Meow. Trust me, it'll help. As we stood and started walking, I realized something. For years, I'd been defending Meera, making excuses, smoothing things over, convincing myself and everyone else that her behavior was just part of her charm. That I needed to loosen up, be more fun, stop being so serious all the time. But maybe, and this was a radical thought, maybe I wasn't the one who needed to change. Maybe the problem was never about me not being able to take a joke. Maybe the problem was that our entire relationship had become the joke, and I was the only one who didn't think it was funny. By day 2 of my involuntary Canadian residency, my phone had transformed from a communication device into a weapon of psychological warfare. Meera had apparently woken up, checked her phone, and decided that radio silence from her abandoned husband was unacceptable. The texts started rolling in around noon, each one more baffling than the last. "We're back in Seattle. You, Matt." I stared at that message for a solid 3 minutes, trying to decode if this was a genuine question or if she'd somehow managed to forget the basic principles of cause and effect. "Yes, Meera, I'm mad. Shockingly, when you abandon your spouse in a foreign country as a prank, it tends to generate negative emotions. Who knew? Lighten up, babe. It was funny." Face with tears of joy. There it was. The classic mirror defense strategy. If someone's upset, it's not because you did something wrong. It's because they're taking things too seriously. I could practically hear her saying it in that tone she used whenever I dared to have feelings about her chaos. That slightly condescending, "Aren't you being dramatic" voice that made me feel like I was overreacting for having basic human emotions. "Why aren't you answering? Don't be like this." "Oh, I'm sorry. Was I supposed to drop everything and validate your feeling that international abandonment is peak comedy? My bad. Let me just put aside this minor existential crisis I'm having and focus on making sure you feel good about your terrible decisions." I didn't respond to any of them. Partly because I genuinely didn't know what to say that wouldn't evolve into a caps lock essay about respect and boundaries, but mostly because Sarah had dragged me to some kind of artisan hot chocolate place, and I was discovering that Canadians took their cocoa very seriously. There were flavor options I didn't even know existed. Lavender honey, maple bacon. The woman behind the counter had given me a 15-minute explanation about cacao percentages that I pretended to understand. But ignoring Meera meant I had mental bandwidth to do something I should have done days ago. Call the people who actually gave a damn about me. Not the people who thought leaving me stranded was hilarious, but the people who would probably drive to Canada to commit felonies on my behalf, if I asked nicely. First up, my sister Grace. Grace Hayes was 5 years younger than me, 4 inches shorter and approximately 1,000 times more intimidating. She was a family law attorney who spent her days dealing with the worst of humanity's relationship decisions, which meant she had exactly zero patience for nonsense. Calling her about this situation felt like calling in an airstrike on my own marriage. But honestly, my marriage had already bombed itself without any help. She picked up on the second ring. "Please tell me you're not calling from Canadian jail." "Why would I be in Canadian jail?" "Because the last text I got from you said, 'Meera left me here.' And then nothing for 2 days. I've been imagining scenarios. None of them were good. Several involved you going full taken, but with more flannel and maple syrup." I couldn't help but laugh. No jail, just abandonment and existential dread. The usual Tuesday stuff. "Liam, what the hell happened?" So, I told her the whole story. From waking up to cold sheets to discovering my cancelled flight to the helpful text messages about how I should lighten up. I could hear Grace's breathing change as I talked, going from concern to angry to the kind of quiet fury that defense attorneys probably had nightmares about. When I finished, there was a long pause. "Then I'm going to say this once, and I need you to really hear me, okay? Okay. That wasn't quirky, Liam. That wasn't spontaneous or fun or any of those words you've been using to describe Myra's behavior for 3 years. That was emotional arson. She lit your sense of security on fire and is now upset that you're not thanking her for the warmth." "Emotional arson," I repeated, testing out the phrase. "That's actually really accurate." "Of course, it's accurate. I'm a lawyer. I get paid to be accurate." Grace's voice softened slightly. "But more importantly, I'm your sister and I've been watching you make excuses for this woman since you started dating her. Every time she pulled some stunt, you'd call me and say, 'Oh, she didn't mean it that way.' Or, 'She's just really spontaneous,' or my personal favorite. That's just how she is." My stomach twisted. "I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you married someone who treats your feelings like optional DLC in a video game. And now she's surprised you're not laughing along with her little joke. You know what that's called?" "What?" "Cruelty with Wi-Fi." I actually snorted hot chocolate up my nose, which was both painful and somehow exactly what I needed. Sarah, who'd been pretending not to listen from across the table, gave me a concerned thumbs up. "Grace, you can't just say things like that when I'm drinking." "I can and I will. Someone needs to tell you the truth instead of coddling your feelings. Meera doesn't respect you. She probably never did. She just liked having someone around to clean up her messes and make her feel like her chaos was charming instead of exhausting. The words hit harder because I knew she was right. How many times had I apologized to waiters for Meera's behavior? How many awkward conversations had I had with our neighbors about noise complaints? How many times had I covered her half of the rent because she'd blown her paycheck on something essential like a $200 candle that smelled like midnight in Tuscany or whatever? I should have listened to you, I said quietly. At the wedding, when you pulled me aside and asked if I was sure. I didn't want to be right, Liam. I wanted you to be happy, but happy doesn't mean tolerating someone who treats you like a supporting character in their one-woman show. Grace paused. So, what are you going to do? Honestly, I have no idea. Right now, I'm just trying to survive until I can get a flight home. Good. Survive process. And then when you get back, we're having a very serious conversation about boundaries and self-respect and why you need to stop setting yourself on fire to keep other people warm. More fire metaphors. I'm on a roll. Don't interrupt. But I could hear the smile in her voice. Love you, dummy. Text me every day so I know you're alive. And if Meera contacts you again, you have my permission to ignore her until you're ready to deal with that dumpster fire. After we hung up, I sat there feeling like I'd just gone through some kind of emotional car wash. Uncomfortable, disorienting, but ultimately cleaner somehow. Then my phone rang again. Derek. Derek Chun had been my best friend since college when we bonded over a shared hatred of our organic chemistry professor and a mutual love of terrible horror movies. He was a software engineer who worked from home, which meant he had way too much time to overthink other people's problems while avoiding his own. Dude, he said instead of, hello. Grace called me. What the actual hell? Yeah, it's been a week. A week, man. It's been 2 days and you've already lived through what most people would consider a valid reason for a nervous breakdown. Are you okay? And before you give me that I'm fine nonsense, remember that I've known you for 12 years. I can hear your stress levels through the phone. I glanced at Sarah, who is now openly eavesdropping while pretending to scroll through her camera. I'm processing. That's the word we're using. Processing. Processing is good. Processing is healthy. Derek paused. Can I offer my professional opinion as your best friend and amateur psychologist? Do I have a choice? Not really. Here it is. Meera is a prank from the 7th circle of stupidity and you need to leave her ass in the dust where it belongs. 7th circle of stupidity. I've been reading Dante. Seemed relevant. He was on a roll now. Seriously, Liam, this isn't normal couple stuff. This isn't we had a fight about whose turn it is to do dishes or she forgot my birthday again. This is calculated. She planned this. She canceled your flight while you were asleep, coordinated with her friends, and then texted you like it was all just good fun. That's not a prank. That's a psychological experiment to see how much you'll tolerate. My throat felt tight. When you put it like that, it sounds insane because it is. And the worst part, I bet she's telling everyone back here some version of this story where she's the fun, spontaneous wife and you're the uptight husband who can't take a joke. He was right. Of course, he was right. I could practically write Meera's version of events. OMG. So, I totally pranked Liam by leaving him in Canada. It was hilarious, but now he's being all serious about it. Men, am I right, Derek? Yeah. Thanks for not telling me I'm overreacting, brother. You're underreacting. You should be burning her stuff on the front lawn. Metaphorically, don't actually do that. That's illegal, and Grace would have to defend you. After I hung up, Sarah slid a fresh hot chocolate across the table. Sounds like you've got good people. The best people, I agreed. They're definitely not afraid to tell me when I'm being an idiot. That's what good people do. She raised her mug to friends and family who see through the I clinked my mug against hers, feeling something shift in my chest. For the first time since this whole nightmare started, I wasn't defending Meera. I wasn't making excuses or trying to see things from her perspective or wondering if maybe I was being too sensitive. I was just done. Done with that's just how she is. Done with being the reasonable one. Done with a marriage that had cost me my dignity, my peace, and apparently a return flight from Canada. There's something oddly peaceful about watching the sun rise over a frozen lake when your entire life is falling apart. Maybe it's the contrast. Nature doing its serene, beautiful thing, while your personal reality resembles a dumpster fire in a wind tunnel. Or maybe it's just that at 6 a.m. even your anxiety is too tired to fully commit to the panic. I'd wandered down to the lake shore with a cup of gas station coffee that tasted like regret and burnt rubber, which felt thematically appropriate. Sleep had been a joke the night before. Every time I closed my eyes, my brain decided to replay every terrible moment of my marriage like some kind of sadistic Netflix series. Marriages that should have ended in season 1, but inexplicably got renewed for 3 years. So, here I was, sitting on a bench that someone had thoughtfully cleared of snow, staring at the mountains reflected in the still water, and doing what any rational person does when their life implodes, making a list. I pulled out the small notebook I'd bought from the gift shop the day before. It had a moose on the cover because of course it did. This was Canada and apparently every single product had to feature their national animal or a maple leaf. No exceptions. At the top of the first page, I wrote in big letters things I'm never doing again. Number 1 practically wrote itself. 1. Apologizing for someone else's idiocy. God, how many times had I done that? How many times had I stood in front of confused waiters, annoyed neighbors, frustrated coworkers, and said, "I'm so sorry. She didn't mean it that way." Or, "She's just really passionate." Or other such verbal gymnastics designed to make Meera's chaos seem acceptable. I remembered the time she'd gotten into a screaming match with our landlord about a noise complaint. Not a polite disagreement, a full-blown voice echoing through the hallway situation that ended with me apologizing for 30 minutes straight while she sat on the couch scrolling through Instagram like nothing had happened. Afterward, she told me I was too nice and that the landlord deserved to be yelled at for being uptight. The landlord's complaint had been about us playing music at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. He wasn't being uptight. He was being employed and needing sleep. 2. Calling manipulation spontaneity. That one hurt to write because it meant admitting I'd been lying to myself. For years, I'd convinced myself that Meera's unpredictable behavior was exciting, that her disregard for plans was just her being free-spirited. But there's a difference between spontaneity and chaos, between being flexible and being unreliable. Spontaneous is, "Hey, let's take a different route home and see where it leads." Manipulative is canceling someone's flight home and calling it entertainment. I was halfway through writing number 3 when I heard footsteps crunching through the snow behind me. "You're up early," Sarah said, appearing with 2 actual good coffees and travel mugs that steamed in the cold air. She handed me one and sat down next to me without asking, which I was starting to realize was just her thing. Couldn't sleep. Sleep requires a brain that occasionally shuts up. Mine's running a 24/7 operation, apparently. I showed her the notebook, making a list of things I'm never doing again. It's therapeutic, or it will be. Right now, it just feels like documenting my own stupidity. She peered at the page. Those first 2 are solid. What's number 3? I was thinking never flying without travel insurance again, but that feels like it's missing the bigger picture. How about never flying with someone who treats your existence like an optional side quest? Sarah suggested taking a sip of her coffee. I laughed and wrote it down but modified it slightly. 3. Never flying anywhere or doing anything with Meera again. It felt good to write permanent, like I was making a promise to myself that I actually intended to keep. Sarah pulled out her own phone and opened the Notes app. "Okay, if we're doing this, I'm adding my contribution. Number 4, stop dating women who think pranks are personality traits." That's yours to add, not mine. It applies to both of us. My ex thought it was hilarious to hide my camera equipment and watch me panic looking for it. Said I was too serious about work. Yeah, I'm serious about the thing that pays my rent and gives my life meaning. Revolutionary concept. I added it to the list. Number 4, stop tolerating people who mistake cruelty for humor. Better. She approved. More universal. Applicable to all relationship types. We sat there in companionable silence for a while, both of us adding to our respective lists. Mine was growing disturbingly long. Don't ignore red flags just because they're wearing a pretty dress. Don't let someone else define what you should find acceptable. Don't stay in relationships where you're constantly walking on eggshells. Don't mistake anxiety for excitement. That last one hit different. How many times had I felt that knot in my stomach before Meera came home, wondering what kind of mood she'd be in, what spontaneous decision she'd made that I'd have to deal with. I told myself it was just the thrill of being with someone unpredictable, that relationships were supposed to be exciting, but excitement shouldn't feel like dread. Adventure shouldn't require a safety net made of apologies and damage control. My phone buzzed. I didn't even need to look to know it was Meera, but I looked anyway. Big mistake. The text was a screenshot of a Facebook post. Her Facebook post, and it was wow. It was something. Sometimes people just can't take a joke. Face with rolling eyes. Hashtag marriage is hard, he will get over it. Hashtag girl weekend success. I stared at it. Read it again. Then a third time just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating from lack of sleep and too much bad coffee. She didn't, Sarah said, reading over my shoulder. Please tell me she didn't just post about this on social media. She did. She absolutely did. I scrolled down to the comments, watching in real time as the internet did what the internet does best: deliver swift and merciless justice. My cousin Rebecca had commented first. Leaving your husband in another country isn't a joke. It's a felony with snacks. What's wrong with you? Myra's co-worker Jessica. Girl, this isn't the flex you think it is. This is actually kind of scary. Someone I didn't even recognize. Ma'am, this is emotional abuse with a hashtag attached. And my personal favorite from Derek: imagine thinking this makes you look good instead of absolutely unhinged. Could not be me. The comments kept rolling in and they weren't getting any friendlier. Even some of Myra's own friends, the ones who usually backed her up on everything, were questioning this one. Nora, one of the fun squad members who'd been on the trip. Meera, maybe we should talk about this privately. This is getting kind of intense. Becca, another fun squad member. I didn't realize he was this upset. I thought you said he was okay with it. She told them I was okay with it. I said slowly, letting that sink in. She told her friends that I was fine being abandoned in Canada. Sarah's expression had gone from amused to genuinely angry. Of course, she did, because the alternative would be admitting she did something genuinely terrible. Easier to rewrite the story and make you the bad guy for not playing along. More comments appeared. My mom had found the post. Oh God, my mother had found the post and was now commenting in all caps because she still didn't understand that caps lock was basically internet yelling. Mara Louise, you call my son right now and apologize. This is not funny. This is not acceptable. I did not raise him to be treated this way. Even Myra's own mother had weighed in. Sweetheart, I think you need to take this down and have a serious conversation with Liam. This isn't something to joke about publicly. I watched in real time as Myra's post went from what she probably thought would be a funny story about her quirky personality to a full-blown public relations disaster. The likes were minimal. The comments were brutal, and the few people who tried to defend her with, "It's just a prank. Everyone needs to lighten up," were getting ratioed into oblivion. Sarah was recording the comment section on her phone. I'm saving this for posterity and also because this is the most beautiful karma I've seen in months. Is it wrong that I'm enjoying this? No, it's human. She tried to humiliate you and it backfired spectacularly. That's not wrong to appreciate. That's just the universe balancing itself out. My phone started buzzing with texts. Grace, have you seen Mom's comment? She's going nuclear. Derek bro the comments. This is better than any movie. My boss Liam, I saw your wife's post through the office grapevine. Take as much time as you need. HR has been notified of the situation. We're here to support you. Wait, my boss. HR, how big had this gotten? I checked the share count on Myra's post. 47 shares. 47 people had taken her post about abandoning me and shared it with their own commentary. None of it flattering. Someone had screenshotted it and posted it to Reddit. It was on Twitter. A TikTok account that compiled unhinged Facebook posts had featured it. Meera had gone viral, just not in the way she'd intended. My phone rang. Meera. I declined it. It rang again immediately. Declined. A text. People are being so mean. Make them stop. I showed Sarah. She read it and actually laughed out loud. The sound echoing across the frozen lake. Make them stop. She created this mess and now she wants you to fix it. The audacity is honestly impressive. I turned off my phone. Just powered it down completely. Sarah raised her coffee cup to public accountability. I clinkied my cup against hers. To karma moving faster than usual, to never apologizing for someone else's idiocy, she added, reading from my list. To that, I agreed. Definitely to that. The sun had fully risen now, painting the mountains in shades of pink and gold. Somewhere back in Seattle, Meera was probably panicking, watching her carefully curated social media presence implode in real time. And here I was sitting by a frozen lake in Canada, drinking decent coffee with a woman who was basically a stranger, but somehow felt like the first person in years who actually got it. You know what, I said, pulling out my notebook again. I need to add one more thing to this list. What's that? I wrote it carefully. 5. Start trusting myself when something feels wrong instead of waiting for permission from the internet to be upset. Sarah read it and nodded approvingly. That's a good one. That's maybe the best one. 5 days into my Canadian exile, something weird happened. I stopped feeling like a victim and started feeling like a person on vacation. A weird, unplanned, emotionally complicated vacation, but still the kind where you wake up without an alarm. Don't check your email and actually remember what it's like to exist without someone else's chaos dictating your entire day. Sarah had insisted we drive to Calgary for the day. You need to get out of BA, she'd said over breakfast, which had become our thing apparently. Every morning at the same cafe, same table by the window, same barista Janet who'd started making my coffee before I even ordered because she'd memorized my emotionally devastated husband who needs caffeine and maybe a hug specifications. Why do I need to leave B? I'd asked, shoveling scrambled eggs into my mouth like someone who'd forgotten that food could be enjoyable instead of just fuel for surviving another day. Because you're starting to get comfortable here. And comfortable means you're going to start overthinking everything again. I can see it happening. You get this look on your face like you're doing calculus in your head. Except the math is reasons why I should give Meera another chance. She wasn't wrong. The night before, I'd caught myself composing a text to Meera in my head. Something diplomatic and mature about how we should talk when I got back. How maybe we could work through this with counseling. How every marriage had rough patches. You know, the kind of mental gymnastics that required ignoring the fact that my rough patch involved international abandonment and public humiliation. So, there we were in Sarah's beat-up Honda CR-V that smelled faintly of coffee and camera equipment, driving down the Trans-Canada Highway with mountains on either side and classic rock playing at a volume that made conversation optional. It was perfect. No talking, no analyzing, no trying to figure out what anything meant. Just driving. Calgary turned out to be bigger than I expected. Like someone took a chunk of American Midwest, dropped it in Canada, and told it to be polite about everything. Sarah knew exactly where she was going, which should have been my first clue that she had a plan. Street market, she announced, pulling into a parking spot with the confidence of someone who'd done this 100 times. Every Saturday. Best street food in the province, random art vendors, and enough people watching to make you forget your own problems for at least 3 hours. 3 hours seems optimistic. I'm an optimist. It's my worst quality. She locked the car and started walking, assuming I'd follow, which I did because at this point, arguing with Sarah felt pointless. The woman had a plan for everything and the energy to execute it, which was either impressive or exhausting depending on your perspective. The market was chaos, but the good kind. The kind where you're surrounded by strangers who don't know your life story, don't care about your drama, and just want to sell you handmade soap shaped like tiny bears or paintings of the mountains that all somehow looked exactly the same but cost wildly different amounts. Tacos, Sarah declared, pointing to a food truck with a line of at least 20 people. That line means it's worth the wait. Trust me, I don't even like waiting for things I know are good. Why would I wait for theoretical tacos? Because you've spent the last 3 years of your life waiting for me to act like a decent human being. So, waiting 20 minutes for actual good food should be a breeze by comparison. I couldn't argue with that logic, mainly because it hurt too much to try. We waited. Sarah was right. It was worth it. The tacos were the kind of good that makes you temporarily forget you have problems. Perfectly seasoned meat, fresh toppings, and that indefinable quality that only comes from someone who actually gives a damn about what they're making. We found a bench near a fountain that wasn't running because it was still too cold and ate in the kind of comfortable silence that I'd forgotten could exist between two people. Can I ask you something? Sarah said between bites, using her napkin to catch some salsa before it dripped on her jacket. You're going to anyway. Fair. What was the moment you knew? Like the exact moment when you realized your marriage was actually over, not just going through a rough patch. I thought about it, chewing slowly while I mentally sorted through the highlight reel of disasters. You want the honest answer. I literally only want honest answers. Dishonest answers are boring and they don't help anyone. It was probably that Facebook post I admitted when she made it about her being the victim of people not getting the joke. That's when I realized she wasn't capable of seeing anything from my perspective. She didn't feel bad about what she did. She felt bad that people called her out for it. Sarah nodded like she'd expected that answer. My ex did something similar. When I finally told him that leaving me at the airport because I walked too slow was a deal breaker. You know what he said? What? He said I was being dramatic, that I needed to learn to take a joke, that if I was going to be so sensitive, maybe we weren't compatible anyway. She took another bite of her taco, chewing thoughtfully. And the thing is, he was right. We weren't compatible because I needed a partner who saw me as a person, and he needed an audience who thought his cruelty was comedy. That's exactly it, I said, feeling something click into place. I spent 3 years being Myra's audience, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, applauding spontaneity that was really just selfishness, pretending that chaos was charming instead of exhausting. And now I'm realizing that peace is actually pretty great. Like, shockingly great. I've slept better this week than I have in months. I'm not constantly checking my phone to see what disaster I need to manage. I'm not bracing myself for whatever Meera is going to do next. I'm just existing. And it feels weird because it's so normal. Sarah raised her taco in a mock toast. To the radical concept of not living in constant crisis mode. To not living in crisis mode, I echoed, tapping my taco against hers in what was probably the saddest and most accurate toast of my life. We spent the rest of the afternoon wandering through the market. Sarah stopped to take photos of everything. Street performers, vendor stalls, random architectural details that I would have walked past without noticing. She had this way of seeing things, finding beauty or interest in stuff that seemed completely ordinary to everyone else. You're going to run out of storage on your phone, I pointed out when she stopped to photograph a fire hydrant that had been painted to look like a cartoon character. Never. I delete as I go. Keep only the best shots. She showed me her camera roll. Hundreds of photos. All of them somehow interesting. Mountains at sunset. Close-ups of flower petals. Candid shots of people laughing. A particularly photogenic dog wearing a bandana. Photography is basically therapy where you get to keep the evidence of your healing. That's weirdly profound. I know. I should get it tattooed somewhere visible so people know I'm deep. We ended up at a bookstore because apparently Sarah collected books the way some people collected stamps or regrets. She disappeared into the photography section while I wandered aimlessly. Not really looking for anything specific, just enjoying the smell of paper and the quiet. I found myself in the self-help section, which felt on brand for someone currently living through a personal crisis in a foreign country. The titles were all variations on the same theme. How to leave a toxic relationship. Setting boundaries without guilt, the art of letting go. I picked up one called Stop Walking on Eggshells and flipped through it, recognizing myself on almost every page. The checklist in Chapter 2 could have been written specifically about my marriage. Do you feel like you're constantly apologizing for things that aren't your fault? Do you find yourself explaining or defending your partner's behavior to others? Do you feel anxious about your partner's reactions to normal situations? Have you stopped sharing your feelings because it's easier than dealing with the fallout? Check, 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 and check. Bingo. I had just won the world's saddest game of relationship bingo. Buying it. Sarah appeared next to me with a stack of photography books that probably cost more than my car payment. Maybe. Is it weird to buy a book about your failed marriage while your failed marriage is still technically ongoing? No. It's called being proactive. Though I'd argue your marriage failed the moment she canceled your flight and laughed about it. You're just catching up to reality. I bought the book, also a novel that looked interesting and a bookmark shaped like a moose because apparently I was fully committing to the Canadian tourist experience. As we drove back to BA Sunset painting the mountains in impossible colors, Sarah said something that stuck with me. You know what's funny? Not funny, ha ha, but funny. Weird. What? A week ago, you were married and miserable. Now you're abandoned and somehow less miserable. That should tell you everything you need to know about that relationship. She was right. God help me. She was right. That night, back in my hostel room that didn't smell like wet socks and actually had decent Wi-Fi, I slept for 9 uninterrupted hours. No anxiety dreams about Meera coming home in a weird mood. No waking up at 3 a.m. wondering what chaos tomorrow would bring. No tension sitting in my chest like a permanent house guest who refused to leave. Just sleep. Beautiful, peaceful, boring sleep. And when I woke up the next morning, my first thought wasn't, what disaster do I need to prevent today? It was, I wonder if Janet will have those blueberry muffins again. Turns out freedom tastes a lot like being able to care about muffins again. Who knew? Day 6 of my Canadian adventure, and I woke up with a dangerous thought. Revenge. Not the dramatic burn down the house kind of revenge that gets you arrested and ruins Thanksgiving forever, but the subtle psychological let's see how you like being on the receiving end kind of revenge that makes you feel briefly powerful before the guilt kicks in. Except here's the thing. The guilt wasn't kicking in, not even a little bit. I lay in my hostel bed, staring at the ceiling where someone had stuck those glow-in-the-dark stars that every college dorm room had in 2010 and thought about Meera, specifically about how she'd spent the last 6 days alternating between, "Why are you ignoring me?" texts and public social media posts about how she was choosing herself and not letting negative energy affect her peace. Translation. She'd gotten dragged in the comments and was now trying to spin it as character growth instead of consequences. My phone sat on the nightstand. 11 unread messages from her lighting up the screen. I'd stopped reading them after the first few, which had evolved from defensive to angry to weirdly manipulative. The most recent one, sent at 200 a.m. her time, said, "I can't believe you're letting everyone think I'm a bad person. You know I didn't mean it like that, right? She didn't mean to abandon me in Canada. It just accidentally happened. Like tripping over your own feet, except the feet are your intentional actions and the ground is basic human decency." I grabbed my phone and opened the message thread. Time to try something different. For 6 days, I'd either ignored her or given one-word responses. But what if, and hear me out here, what if I gave her exactly enough information to make her imagination run wild? What if I reminded her that actions have consequences? And sometimes those consequences involve realizing your husband might actually have a better time without you. I typed slowly, deliberately. Thanks for this. Sarah has been the sweetest scent. Then I put my phone face down on the nightstand, got dressed, and headed downstairs to meet Sarah for breakfast like I hadn't just lobbed a conversational grenade into my marriage. Sarah was already at our usual table, laptop open, coffee steaming, looking disgustingly awake for 7 a.m. You look pleased with yourself, she observed. Either you slept really well or you're up to something. Can it be both? It could be, but that smile says I just did something petty and I'm not sorry about it. I sat down, ordered my usual from Janet, and showed Sarah the text I'd sent. She read it, read it again, then slowly looked up at me with an expression somewhere between horror and admiration. Liam, buddy, you did not. I did. You just weaponized my existence. I mean, if we're being technical, Meera weaponized her spontaneity. I'm just evening the playing field. Sarah was trying not to laugh. I could see it in the way her shoulders were shaking, in the way she pressed her lips together like she was physically restraining joy. Do you have any idea what you just started? Hopefully, a mild panic attack where she realizes that treating your spouse like garbage might result in them finding better company. Mild panic attack, Sarah repeated. That's optimistic. I'm guessing full meltdown in approximately. She checked her watch. 30 seconds. 27 seconds later, my phone started vibrating. Not just one call. Multiple calls in rapid succession. Like Meera had discovered the redial button and decided to test its maximum capacity. Call for Meera, declined. Call for Meera, declined. Call for Meera, declined. Text for Meera. Who is Sarah? Text from Meera. Answer your phone. Text from Meera. Liam, I swear to God. Text from Meera. Are you cheating on me? I showed Sarah the cascade of messages. She covered her mouth with both hands, eyes wide. Oh my God. Oh my God, she's spiraling. She's spiraling. I confirmed. Watching new messages pop up in real time. Text from Meera after everything I've done for you. Text from Meera. I can't believe you would do this. Text from Meera. We need to talk right now. Everything she's done for you. Sarah read over my shoulder. Like canceling your flight and leaving you stranded. That kind of everything. Apparently, that counts as a grand romantic gesture in Myra's world. More texts. The voicemails started piling up. I could see the notifications. 7 voicemails in the span of 3 minutes, which had to be some kind of record. The crying emoji started appearing. Then the angry face emoji. Then a string of question marks that looked like she'd just mashed the keyboard with her forehead. Should you answer? Sarah asked, though her tone suggested she already knew my answer and ruined the performance. Absolutely not. I took a sip of my coffee, which Janet had made extra strong today. Like she could sense I needed maximum caffeine for whatever chaos I was creating. Let her sit with it for a while. Let her feel what it's like to not know what's going on. To have someone be unavailable and unresponsive. That's dark. That's proportional. We ate breakfast while my phone continued its seizure on the table. By the time Janet brought over those blueberry muffins I'd been hoping for, I had 271 missed calls. 271. I'd never seen a number that high outside of my credit score or the national debt. The texts had evolved, too. From angry to desperate to bargaining to threatening and back to desperate. It was like watching someone speedrun the 5 stages of grief, except the thing dying was her control over the narrative. Text from Meera. Fine, don't answer, but you're being really immature about this. Text from Meera. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Can we please just talk? Text from Meera. You're making me look bad in front of everyone. Text from Meera. If you're with someone else, I deserve to know. Text from Meera. Liam. Sarah had stopped pretending not to be entertained. She was openly watching my phone like it was the most compelling television show she'd seen in years. She's really committed to this meltdown. You have to respect the dedication. It's impressive. I agreed. 3 years of marriage and she never called me this much when I actually wanted her to. Around 10 a.m., my phone finally rang from a number I recognized. Nora, one of the fun squad members. I looked at Sarah. Should I? Oh, absolutely. This is where it gets good. I answered on speaker. Hello, Liam. Oh, thank God. Myra's been trying to reach you for hours. She's freaking out. Like full-scale meltdown. She thinks you're cheating on her. I'll let that sit for a second. She thinks I'm cheating on her. Yes. She said you mentioned someone named Sarah and now she's convinced you're having an affair in Canada. Interesting theory, I said slowly. Let me ask you something, Nora. When you guys left me in Canada as a prank, did anyone think about how I might feel? Silence? Awkward, uncomfortable silence that lasted just long enough to be satisfying. We thought you'd think it was funny. You thought I'd think being abandoned in a foreign country with a cancelled flight was funny. Meera said you'd be okay with it. She said, you needed an adventure. What I needed, I said, keeping my voice calm and measured, was a wife who didn't treat me like a prop in her comedy routine. What I needed was basic respect. What I got was left behind like forgotten luggage while you guys giggled on the plane home. More silence. I could hear Myra's voice in the background, shrill and demanding. Is that Liam? Give me the phone. Give me the phone. And now I continued, she's upset because I mentioned a friend. A friend who, by the way, has been more considerate and supportive in 6 days than Meera was in 3 years. But sure, let's focus on her feelings about a casual text message instead of the fact that she committed international spouse abandonment. Liam, please just talk to her. Meera had seized the phone. I could hear the struggle, then her voice, tear-stained and frantic. Are you cheating on me? Who is Sarah? Sarah across the table was silently applauding. I took a deep breath, channeled every ounce of the calm, reasonable energy I'd been storing up, and said the most beautiful sentence I'd ever constructed. Relax, Meera. It's just a prank. The sound that came through the phone was somewhere between a shriek and a sob. A prank. This isn't funny, really? Because when you did it to me, you said I just needed to lighten up. That it was hilarious. That I should have seen my face. I paused. How's your face looking right now, Liam? That's different. How is it different? Explain to me in detail how you abandoning me in Canada as a joke is hilarious, but me mentioning a friend is grounds for a meltdown because you're my husband. You're not supposed to. I can't just what exist without you? Make friends? Have a support system? Funny how that works. Sarah was recording this on her phone now, not even trying to hide it. When I raised an eyebrow at her, she whispered, this is art. I'm preserving it for posterity. Meera was full-on crying now. This isn't fair. You know, I didn't mean to hurt you. It was supposed to be fun. You're supposed to forgive me. And you're supposed to treat your husband like a human being instead of a character in your one-woman show. But here we are. So what? You're just going to stay in Canada with some random woman? Sarah's not random. She's been incredibly kind. She helped me find a place to stay, introduced me to people, showed me around. She's basically been the partner I thought I had, except she's actually reliable and doesn't think emotional terrorism is a bonding activity. Emotional terrorism. What would you call it, Ma? Quirky, spontaneous, a hilarious misunderstanding. You canceled my flight while I was asleep, coordinated with your friends to leave me stranded, and then got mad when I didn't immediately laugh it off. That's not a prank. That's calculated. The crying intensified through the sobs. I could hear her trying to form words. I wanted everyone's being so mean to me. Actions have consequences, I said simply. Even for people who think they're too fun and spontaneous to be held accountable. Liam, please. Can we just talk about this when you get home? Please. I looked at Sarah. She gave me a small nod like she was giving me permission to end this however I wanted. Maybe. I said finally. But first, you need to sit with this feeling. The uncertainty, the not knowing, the wondering if your partner is okay, if they're safe, if they're with someone else. You need to feel what you made me feel. Except I'm going to tell you, unlike what you did to me, Sarah is just a friend. Nothing else. But you don't get to demand reassurance after you destroyed my trust. That's cruel, Meera whispered. No, I said that's proportional. Cruel is what you did. This is just me finally having boundaries. I hung up. The cafe was silent except for the soft jazz playing over the speakers. Janet was pretending to wipe down the counter, but was clearly eavesdropping. The couple at the next table had stopped eating to watch. Even the moose painting on the wall seemed impressed. Sarah sat down her phone. That was the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed. I felt that in my soul. I feel sick, I admit it. But also good. Is that weird? It's called self-respect. It feels weird because you've been without it for so long. My phone buzzed. One last text from Meera. I hate you. I showed Sarah. She snorted. Well, at least now you're even. The internet, as it turns out, is like that friend who always has your back in a fight. Except this friend has billions of users, no sense of proportional response, and an unlimited data plan. By the afternoon of day 6, Meera's little marriage is hard post had transformed from a minor social media blip into a full-scale digital reckoning that would have made ancient Greek furies take notes. I was sitting in a coffee shop, different from our usual spot because Sarah insisted I needed to expand my Canadian horizons beyond one cafe when my phone started blowing up again. But this time, it wasn't Meera, it was everyone else. Derek bro, check Facebook right now. It's getting nuclear. Grace, I've never been more proud of strangers on the internet. My cousin Rebecca Meera's post has been shared 200 plus times and the comments are savage. Grab popcorn. Even my mother, who barely understood how Facebook worked and still thought you had to print out emails to save them, had texted. The internet people are being very mean to Meera. I think she deserves it. Is that wrong? Love you, honey. I opened Facebook with the kind of trepidation usually reserved for checking your bank account after a night of drunk online shopping. Meera's original post was still up, but it had mutated into something beyond her control. The comment section looked like a digital crime scene. Her post, for reference, still read, "Sometimes people just can't take a joke face with rolling eyes. #marriage is hard # will get over it. #girls weekend success." But now underneath it was a graveyard of her social credibility. Top comment with 847 likes. Ma'am, abandoning your husband in another country isn't marriage is hard. It's you need a lawyer and possibly a psyche. Val, this ain't the flex you think it is. Second comment, 623 likes. Imagine being so lacking in self-awareness that you post your own crimes on social media and expect sympathy. Could literally not be me. Third comment, 592 likes. I showed this to my therapist and she said it was a textbook example of gaslighting and manipulation. Thanks for the free session content. Someone had even made a meme, an actual meme. It was a screenshot of Meera's post with the caption, "How to speedrun a divorce, a masterclass," and it had been shared across multiple platforms. Twitter was having a field day with it. TikTok lawyers were using it as an example of emotional abuse. A Reddit thread titled "Ida for thinking this woman is unhinged" had 17,000 upvotes. Sarah peered over my shoulder. Oh wow, she's reached cautionary tale status. That's impressive in the worst possible way. I scrolled through more comments, feeling that weird mix of vindication and secondhand embarrassment. Even people who I knew were Meera's friends, her actual real-life friends, were starting to turn. Jessica, her co-worker. Meera, I say this with love. Delete this. This makes you look unhinged, and I don't think that's what you're going for. Her college roommate, Amanda. Girl, reading these comments. And maybe they have a point. This is kind of scary when you actually think about it. Becca from the Fun Squad. I'm starting to realize we maybe shouldn't have done that. Liam, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. That wasn't cool. But the comment that really got me, the one that made me actually laugh out loud in a coffee shop full of polite Canadians who all turned to look at me, was from Meera's own mother. Margaret Hayes had written in the careful typing style of someone who'd only learned Facebook last year. Mirror Louise Hayes, you take this down right now. I did not raise you to treat your husband this way. You call Liam and apologize immediately. This is not funny. This is cruel. I am disappointed in you. Her mother had used her full name on a public Facebook post. That's the parental equivalent of a tactical nuclear strike. Oh no, Sarah said, reading over my shoulder. Oh no, her mom went full government name on her. That's that serious. That's Margaret, I said, feeling a weird pang of affection for my soon-to-be ex-mother-in-law. She doesn't mess around. When Meera was in high school and posted something stupid about cutting class, Margaret commented, "You have detention and grounding young lady" on the post. Meera was mortified for months. My phone buzzed with a text from Margaret herself. Liam, honey, I am so sorry. I don't know what's gotten into that girl. You take all the time you need. She can sleep in the guest room when this is over if she needs to. She's not acting like someone who deserves to share a home. I showed Sarah. Her own mother just offered me the house in the divorce. I mean, can you blame her? If my daughter posted something like this, I'd be offering the wrong spouse my kidney. The shares kept climbing. 250, 300. Someone had sent it to a popular Instagram account that featured unhinged behavior caught in the wild. A podcast about toxic relationships had reached out asking if I'd be willing to be interviewed anonymously. A lifestyle blogger who specialized in red flag recognition had written an entire article breaking down why Meera's post was a masterclass in what not to do. Even my boss had somehow seen it. He'd emailed me, actually formally emailed me through the company system. Liam, I heard through the office grapevine about your situation. First, I'm sorry you're dealing with this. Second, take whatever time you need. We've notified HR and they're available if you need any support or resources. Third, and I'm speaking as someone who's been married for 20 years. Lawyer up. Best wishes, Marcus. My boss had told me to lawyer up in a company email. That's how bad this was. How did my boss even see this? I wondered aloud. We're not Facebook friends. I specifically made sure we weren't Facebook friends because I didn't want him seeing my drunk karaoke videos from Dear Eric's bachelor party. It's been shared over 300 times, Sarah pointed out. At this point, it's probably made it to Antarctica. There's a penguin somewhere judging your marriage. I switched over to Twitter where things had somehow gotten even more chaotic. Someone had created a hashtag #Maplegate. Yes, my international abandonment had been given a hashtag with a maple leaf emoji. The tweets ranged from sympathetic to absolutely brutal. #Maplegate is why I'm staying single forever. Y'all are wild out here. This woman really said, let me commit spousal abandonment and then get mad when the internet calls me out. Like, ma'am, what the way she's trying to play victim after leaving her husband in another country. The audacity, the unmitigated gall. #Maplegate update. She's apparently now mad that he made a friend while stranded because apparently he's supposed to sit alone and miserable until she decides the prank is over. Ma'am, that's not how humans work. That last one had 15,000 likes and had been retweeted by some blue checkmark relationship therapist who added, this is textbook controlling behavior masked as fun. Run, Liam. Run far and fast. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but Sarah encouraged me with a could be interesting shrug. Hello. Hi. Is this Liam Hayes' professional voice slightly nervous? My name is Katie Chan. I'm a producer for the Morning Brew podcast. We cover viral stories and relationship dynamics and we'd love to have you on to discuss your experience if you're comfortable with that. I blinked. I'm sorry. What? Your situation has really resonated with a lot of people. We've been getting hundreds of messages asking us to cover it. Obviously, we'd keep you anonymous if you preferred and I'm going to stop you right there, I said, trying to process that my marriage had become podcast content. I appreciate the offer, but I'm still kind of living through this. Like, it's ongoing active present tense disaster. Of course, totally understand, but if you change your mind, here's my email. And just so you know, people are really rooting for you. The response has been overwhelmingly supportive. After I hung up, I just stared at my phone. Sarah was grinning. You're famous. Canadian abandonment famous, but still. This is insane. A week ago, I was a normal guy with a normal, okay, abnormal marriage. Now, I'm podcast material. Welcome to the internet age where everyone's trauma becomes content. And sometimes that content actually holds people accountable. She raised her coffee cup to viral justice. To viral justice, I echoed weakly. I guess by evening, Meera's post had been shared over 400 times. The comments had reached the point where even people who didn't know either of us were chiming in with relationship advice, personal anecdotes about their own divorces, and increasingly creative insults about Meera's character. Someone had even created a change.org petition titled Justice for Liam. Demand Meera apologize and pay for his flight home. It had 3,000 signatures. 3,000 strangers had signed a petition about my marriage. My phone buzzed with a text from Meera. Are you happy now? Everyone hates me. Everyone, this is all your fault. I showed Sarah. She read it and shook her head. Even now, she's making herself the victim. Impressive. Terrible, but impressive. I didn't respond. What was there to say? That actions have consequences? That maybe, just maybe, if you publicly humiliate your spouse and then double down on social media, the internet will come for you with receipts and no mercy. Instead, I screenshot the text and sent it to Grace with the caption, still can't admit she did anything wrong. Grace responded immediately, of course not. That would require self-awareness and basic human decency. Block her. Seriously, block her number and get some peace. Dear Eric's response was simpler. The audacity of this woman could power a small city. I didn't block her. Not yet. Some part of me, the part that had spent 3 years trying to fix things, trying to be understanding, trying to make it work, wanted to see if she'd ever actually apologize. If she'd ever take real responsibility instead of just being sorry she got caught. Sarah must have read my expression because she said quietly, she's not going to apologize. Not really. People like that don't. They'll say whatever they think you want to hear to make the discomfort stop, but they don't actually change. You sound like you're speaking from experience. My ex never apologized for leaving me at the airport. He apologized for how I felt about it and for the misunderstanding, but he never actually said I was wrong to do that because admitting wrongdoing would mean accepting that his actions had consequences and people like that don't operate that way. I looked at Myra's text again. Are you happy now? The thing was, and this felt weird to admit, I kind of was not happy that she was getting dragged online. Exactly. But happy that for once she was facing actual consequences, that I wasn't alone in thinking her behavior was unacceptable. That the entire internet had basically validated everything I'd been feeling for 3 years. Yeah, I said finally. I think I actually am happy. Is that wrong? Sarah smiled. No, that's called having standards. 3 weeks. My stomach did that thing where it drops into your shoes and starts subletting to your anxiety. I opened it. Dear Mr. Hayes, we represent Mary Louise Hayes in the matter of dissolution of marriage. Please find attached the initial divorce petition. I read it twice, then a third time, then once more because apparently my brain needed multiple confirmations that yes, this was real. And yes, my wife of 3 years had just filed for divorce via a law firm that probably cost more per hour than I made in a day. Sarah walked in right as I was processing this information, 2 coffees in hand because she'd figured out my order weeks ago and had just started bringing me caffeine without asking. She took one look at my face and sat down. What happened? You look like someone just told you Santa isn't real. Meera filed for divorce. I turned my laptop so she could see the email. Her lawyer sent me the papers. Sarah read through it, her expression shifting from curious to incredulous. Wait, she's filing? After everything she did, she's the one filing. Apparently, I scrolled down to the petition itself, which was written in that special legal language designed to make simple concepts sound like ancient prophecies. It says here that this is her difficult but empowering decision, and that she's choosing herself and her mental health. Her mental health. Sarah repeated slowly the mental health that was apparently damaged by Czech's notes abandoning her husband in Canada and facing consequences for it. That's what it says. There's a whole paragraph about how the marriage had become untenable and how she needed to prioritize her well-being. I kept reading, my disbelief growing with each sentence. Oh, and apparently I've been emotionally distant and unwilling to communicate. You've been emotionally distant, Sarah said flatly. You, the guy she left stranded in another country. You're the emotionally distant one. According to this legal document, yes. Also, I'm inflexible and unable to embrace spontaneity. I laughed, but it came out bitter. She's really going with I'm too boring as her legal strategy for divorce. My phone rang immediately. Grace. I put her on speaker. Please tell me you got the same email I just got. Her voice was tight with barely controlled rage. Please tell me I'm not hallucinating that Meera, the woman who abandoned you internationally, is now playing the victim in legal documents. You're not hallucinating. It's real. She's really doing this. She's doing PR damage control. Grace said, think about it. Her Facebook post went viral for all the wrong reasons. Everyone thinks she's terrible, so now she's rewriting the narrative. She files first, claims she's the one who is unhappy, makes you look like the problem. By the time anyone checks the facts, she's already established herself as the brave woman who left a difficult marriage. Sarah was nodding. It's actually kind of brilliant in a sociopathic way. She screwed up, got called out, and is now spinning it, so she looks like the hero of her own story. Derek called 2 minutes later. I didn't even say hello before he launched in. Natural selection but with lawyers. That's what this is. Evolution in action. That's one way to describe it. She's trying to control the narrative, man. She knows she messed up. She knows everyone knows she messed up. So now she's going to make it look like she was the unhappy one all along. Like leaving you in Canada was just the final straw in a long line of your failures as a husband. Except I didn't fail, I said, feeling anger bubble up. I spent 3 years accommodating her chaos. I apologized for things that weren't my fault. I defended her to everyone. I made excuses. I paid for her mistakes. Literally financially paid for them. And now I'm the bad guy. In her version of events, yes, Derek said. But here's the thing. No one with a working internet connection believes her version. That Facebook post is still circulating. People have screenshots. The receipts exist. She can file whatever she wants. But the truth is already out there. After I hung up with Derek, I sat there staring at the divorce petition on my screen. 3 years of marriage reduced to legal paragraphs about irreconcilable differences in separate ways. No mention of the kayak catastrophe. No mention of the $800 sushi order. No mention of being abandoned in a foreign country as a prank. Just sanitized legal language designed to make her look reasonable and me look like the problem. You know what? I said to Sarah, who was quietly working through her own coffee and watching me process, I'm not even mad. You're not? No, I'm relieved. I closed the laptop. She wants a divorce. Great. Perfect. Saves me the trouble of filing myself. She wants to spin this as her empowering choice. Fine, let her have that. I know what happened. Everyone who matters knows what happened. She can tell whatever story she wants to her lawyer. Sarah smiled. That's character growth right there. Or maybe I'm just too tired to care anymore. I leaned back in my chair, feeling something shift. 3 weeks ago, getting divorce papers would have destroyed me. But now I'm just thinking about what kind of donut I want with this coffee. That's not tiredness. That's freedom. She was right. 3 weeks of being away from Meera, 3 weeks of peace, of not walking on eggshells, of not bracing myself for the next disaster had shown me what life could actually feel like. And it felt good. Shockingly good. The kind of good that makes you realize how bad things were before. I'd started working remotely from this cafe, running on espresso, and what Sarah called divorced guy energy. My code was cleaner than it had been in months. My productivity was up. My stress levels were down. Turns out not living in constant crisis mode really helps with focus. I'd even started going to the gym at the hostel, a sad little room with 3 machines and motivational posters from 2015, but it counted. Sarah had dragged me hiking twice, which I'd initially resisted because nature, but had secretly enjoyed because mountains don't judge your life choices, and the views made excellent Instagram content for my thriving post-abandonment aesthetic. My phone buzz. Text from Meera. I hope you're happy. You've ruined everything. I showed Sarah. She rolled her eyes. Still your fault somehow. Even when she's the one filing. It's impressive. Really? The commitment to never accepting responsibility. Are you going to respond? I thought about it. Thought about all the things I could say, all the accusations I could make, all the evidence I could present, all the ways I could explain exactly how wrong she was. Instead, I typed, I hope you find what you're looking for. I'm good here. And I meant it. Not in a bitter way, not in a I'll show her way. Just honestly, I was good. Better than good. I discovered that life without constant chaos was actually pretty great. Who knew? Sarah had started teaching me photography basics, claiming I had decent composition instincts for someone who's been emotionally dead inside. We'd fallen into an easy rhythm. Breakfast at the grind, work until lunch, afternoon walks, or coffee shop hopping, dinner at whatever random restaurant we felt like trying. Sometimes we talked about deep stuff. Sometimes we just existed in the same space without needing to fill the silence. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. Anyway, it was just comfortable. The kind of comfortable I'd thought I had with Meera, but realized now was just me being comfortable with discomfort. A week after receiving the divorce papers, I got another email. This one from my lawyer. Yes, I'd gotten a lawyer because Grace had literally threatened to disown me if I try to handle this myself. Mr. Hayes, we've reviewed the petition from Mrs. Hayes' counsel. Given the circumstances and evidence, we recommend proceeding with the divorce as uncontested. The division of assets should be straightforward. We'll handle everything. Try not to stress. Try not to stress. As if stress was the dominant emotion here and not overwhelming relief mixed with slight disbelief that this was actually happening. I called Grace. Your lawyer friend is efficient. She's the best. And she thinks Myra's lawyer is an idiot for including that emotionally distant language, by the way. Makes it sound like Myra is grasping for reasons, which she is. So, what happens now? Now you let the lawyers handle it. Sign some papers and move on with your life. The only drama left is whatever Meera creates. And that's not your problem anymore. Not my problem anymore. For words that felt like a weight lifting off my chest. That night, Sarah and I went to a donut shop she'd been hyping for days. It was one of those hipster places where the donuts had names like Maple Bacon Bourbon Bliss and cost $7 each, but were worth every penny. I got the maple bacon one because when in Canada, embrace the maple. Sarah got something with lavender and lemon that she claimed was life-changing. We sat outside despite the cold, wrapped in the blankets the shop provided, eating overpriced donuts and watching people walk by. Can I ask you something? Sarah said between bites. Sure. Do you miss her, Meera? I mean, not the chaos, but her. I thought about it. Really thought about it. I miss who I thought she was. I miss the idea of her. The version that existed in my head where she was just quirky and fun and spontaneous instead of chaotic and inconsiderate. But the real her, the one who left me here and then filed for divorce while claiming I was the problem. I shook my head. No, I don't miss that at all. Good answer. Do you miss your ex? The airport abandoned her. She laughed. Sometimes I miss having someone to split rant with, but him specifically. God, no. Best thing that ever happened to me was him leaving. Forced me to figure out I was better off alone than with someone who treated me like an inconvenience. To being better off, I said, raising my donut. She tapped hers against mine. To being better off, my phone buzzed one more time. Another text from Meera. I can't believe you're okay with this. I looked at it. Looked at my half-eaten maple bacon donut. Looked at Sarah, who was photographing her lavender lemon situation for Instagram. Looked at the mountains in the distance, painted pink by the sunset. Yeah, I was okay with this. More than okay. I was free. Months later, I sat with Sarah under fairy lights outside a small lakeside diner. The divorce was finalized. Meera had moved on to her next victim, some guy she met at a manifestation workshop who probably thought her chaos was charming. For now, Sarah asked, do you miss her? I shook my head. I miss who I thought she was. Turns out she canceled that flight, too. My phone buzzed. Myra's final text. I hope you're happy. I replied, happier than ever. Then blocked her number. Somewhere between snow, sarcasm, and second chances, I'd found freedom. Maybe something more with Sarah, who looked at me like I was actually worth showing up for. You know, Sarah, she thought abandoning me in Canada would be hilarious. Sarah smirked. Was it? Yeah, I said, reaching for her hand. Just not in the way she expected. Canada hadn't just given me distance from my marriage. It had given me perspective, peace, and proof that life without constant chaos was actually pretty damn good. Meera had meant to strand me. Instead, she'd freed me. Best prank ever.